Hello. Today in my writing process, I'm going to talk about the character draft, which is the fifth draft for me and which is about pressing on. If you've been watching this series, you know that my last video was a bit negative. Perhaps that is something to note as far as process is concerned. Writing is a roller coaster of emotions, I think, and maybe the larger the project, the more these emotions arc. If you watched the last video in this, you know that I was doubting continuing this video series. I did a lot of soul searching, a lot of research, a lot of thinking about it, but I made this decision. I started this, I'm gonna finish it. I was complaining a lot about channel analytics, but screw it. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. The thing is, my channel gets pulled in a few different directions. I have my Gnostic exploration, and even within that, I think there are people that prefer the movie analysis more than my deep dives or my thoughts about the subject. But there's also my storytelling, there's also this series. The thing is all of these are part of me, so I'm not going to censor myself just to feed the algorithm. I'm a writer, a Gnostic, an occultist, kind of a pop culture commentator. I'm all these things, so I'm just going to embrace it. So this series is going to continue. If I've learned anything through my investigations of this, is I think that YouTube's algorithm is a little bit too simplistic. If you do a bunch of cat videos and you suddenly do a dog video, it's the same creator, and perhaps the people that are interested in your cat videos would be interested in the dog video as well, but then YouTube will not put it out to those people as much because the interest is slightly different. I think it's kind of stupid, but we'll see what happens. Doubt in the halfway point. So I would say I'm about halfway through the fifth draft now. It's been a bit since I've done a video. I have diligently been working on this. It's hard to say if this is halfway. This is a very large project and it can go really in any direction at this point. There are a lot of details that I'm trying to iron out, and each day has been a bit of a slog of doing this. But I think for me, the name of the game right now is getting past doubt. There is a hump here, or maybe a better word is a sag. It feels a little bit like this. When you have a bunch of people holding a sheet taut and they're trying to throw someone up in the air. If just one of those people is not part of the group or falters in some way, the whole thing comes apart and the person falls, right? And the more people you have doing this, the more you have to coordinate with each other. And I think that's the real problem here, is I have so many minor characters in this just because of the nature of what I set up, that it is kind of a balancing act trying to get them all in their right spot with the right amount of attention. Also, if you've been watching this series, probably the last 10 videos or so, I've had a lot of difficulties in my life which have not helped with my process here. And to be honest, it hasn't really let up. There have been some moves forward, but there are still issues I'm kind of grappling with that have nothing to do with my writing process. I just found out I may have to move again. I'm not exactly ready to do that. So that has been something else that's kind of interjected into this and made me have to think about other things. However, it's not just those things. The middle is a really hard time in the process. There's not much innovation going on. It's not as exciting as maybe the beginning, where you're coming up with a lot of the ideas and things are just kind of gelling. It's just a lot of crossing the T's and dotting the I's, finishing up the structural facets of the work. It's weird because at the beginning and at the end, I think there are a lot of creative decisions that have to happen. The front, you have all your ideation, there's the excitement of planning, the story is taking shape, so there's an excitement in that. You're kind of pulling things out of thin air, there's a lot of invention. In the back end, you are polishing, editing your ideas a little bit, sculpting the narrative. There's an excitement about the poetry of your language and the nuance you're trying to put into the text. The middle is a little bit like tarring an old wooden ship. It takes an incredible amount of work, and if you leave one thing off, then your ship will sink. In my case, I'm trying to make sure all of my characters are getting their due, but there's also this nagging feeling that you need to move along. I think it's natural for us to want to get to the fun part, the streamlining, making it into something beautiful and complete. My character draft. So as I've been working on this, it's a lot like writing smaller books in some ways. My novel is written in the first person, so my protagonist has a lot covered. In this pass, I'm trying to see it from the other characters' perspectives. Even though I'm writing in the first person, I also think it's important to look at it from their point of view. What do they want? What do they need? What kills them inside? How do they fit into the story beyond just set dressing? Can I give them arcs? Should I give them arcs? Faulkner said that the character is the heart in conflict with itself. And even if a character has one line of dialogue, I kind of think this applies. How do you get this across with minor characters? In this draft, I'm clustering characters up into 2s and 3s. I have 3 very different sisters that have a complicated familial dynamic. I have a father and a daughter with a tenuous relationship. I think good matches are adversaries or lovers, or maybe they have some tragedy that links them. If they have some kind of connection story-wise, then I'll bundle them up. By doing this, I can create mini stories, these kind of minor plots that may influence the big picture. And because the characters are connected, it's easier to think about them that way. I think what this does is adds realism. It doesn't necessarily improve the plot or anything, but I think it does add to the immersion. It feels more real when everything kind of comes alive. I think it's easier to write setting in some ways. It's a little more straightforward. Characters are a bit more elusive. But I think this is a lot like weaving. I went to a craft school, and so I saw a lot of weavers. There was a fabric department at my school. I went for book arts and creative writing. When a weaver works on a loom, they focus on several things at once. They're focusing on the line that they're weaving. Is it even? Is it tight enough? Is it consistent? They're keeping track of how this line contributes to the pattern or the weave. Also, they're keeping track of what their hands are doing. There's kind of these different movements going on, and their feet as well. But as they're kind of balancing all this, they're also keeping an eye on the overall shape. And if there is a pattern or an image, how that is progressing within the shape. Has it remained square? Do I need to adjust something to get it back in line? Every crossing of line with line can tip the work into a different direction so that it starts to go off, right? It throws it out of whack. One distinct change in a plot can make the whole thing fall into disarray. So at this point, I'm very careful about what I'm doing. Getting through it, hack. Because this stage is such a slog, I think it's important to keep your excitement up or your motivation. If you have a little bit of spare time, it doesn't hurt to dive back into your first chapter or your last chapter. While you're going through this kind of rocky part, I find that jumping back into these can give you some hope. It can also spark some ideas for the rest of what you're working on. It's partly about refining it a little bit, but it's also about getting it fresh in your head. Where have I come from? Where am I going to? They are probably the most important parts of your book as well, so giving them a little bit of attention doesn't hurt. I think that there is a temptation to fall into apathy when you get to this point where you're just using your will to get through it. You have to be careful about jumping into these other parts though, because you could use this as a form of procrastination where your attention is not focused on where it's supposed to be. So I say do it, but I say do it with a little bit of a deft hand and lightly. I treat it as a kind of reward. I will do a bit on some characters, and then if I have 15 or 20 minutes to just poke around with it, I'll go in there and do a little bit. The key is to not let it become the focus and divert you away from what you're trying to do. Just remember that there'll be time to fiddle with it later, but you're just trying to give yourself something to reinvest your energy into the work. And maybe, it's best to do this when you feel down or you need a break from the other stuff. It does give you the feeling that, yeah, I'm getting something done. I look at it this way though. It's better to find something that will get you through it than to get so bogged down with these negative parts that you end up quitting. You don't want to be smothered by this kind of mundane stress. But that's all I got for this one. I'm gonna keep working on this. It's pretty much a summer project at this point. I still have a lot to do with the characters. I have made a lot of progress. I can see it becoming better, but there's still much more to do. If you have anything to say about my decision with this playlist, about continuing it, you can post that below. If you have anything to say about character work, you can also comment that. But that's all I got. Take care. Have a good day.